The phrase total atomic annihilation, coined by Bethesda Game Studios in their game Fallout 4, released in 2015, should strike fear into one's heart. What unimaginable horrors would surface if the nuclear war portrayed in the Fallout franchise became a reality? Well, to tell you the truth, it almost did. The real-life inspiration for the Fallout series is the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. And in our world, no one single event came closer to escalating to full-scale nuclear war than the Cuban Missile Crisis. After the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, an invasion intended to overthrow the communist government of Cuba, led by Fidel Castro, and installation of U.S. nuclear missiles in both Turkey and Italy, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev had only one option for a response, and that was to agree to Castro's request and install nuclear missiles in Cuba to deter any future U.S. invasion. And in the summer of 1962, the construction of the missile facilities began. The United States learned about the missile facilities about 3 months later, when a U.S. spy plane took high-definition photos of the island and discovered them. In response to the missile installations, the U.S. issued a naval blockade of Cuba on October 22, 1962, to prevent further missiles from being exported to the island. The United States quickly announced that they will not allow further missiles to be sent to Cuba, and demanded the missiles already installed to be dismantled and sent back to the Soviet Union. After a long period of tense negotiations between President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, an agreement was reached. Publicly, the Soviet Union will dismantle all offensive weapons installed in Cuba under United Nations supervision. In exchange, the U.S. would publicly declare to avoid invading Cuba without proper provocation, and dismantle their missiles in both Turkey and Italy. With all missiles dismantled in Cuba, the U.S. ended their blockade on November 21st, 1962. In the aftermath of the crisis, it was clear that fast communication needed to be established between the two leaders of the Cold War. Thus, the Moscow-Washington hotline was created, a direct link between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union left Cuba in embarrassment, and the Soviet people began to lose faith in the leadership of Khrushchev, as they saw it as the Soviets backing down from a fight they had started. This loss of faith led to Khrushchev being removed from office by the highest-ranking government authority of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. Cuba saw the retreat of the Soviets as a betrayal, as the decisions to resolving the crisis were only between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and did not involve Cuba whatsoever. This led to Cuban-Soviet relations to deteriorate for many, many years. And finally, the United States was displeased with the actions of President John F. Kennedy. According to Alan Axelrod's book, The Real History of the Cold War, A New Look at the Past, published in 2004 by Sterling Publishing Company, General Curtis LeMay told President Kennedy that he believed the resolution of the crisis was the greatest defeat in our history. However, this was a position that few supported. General LeMay pressured to invade Cuba as soon as the crisis began, and still favored invasion even after the Soviets had left the island. I would like to conclude this history lesson with a quote from the book Quotations of John F. Kennedy, published by Applewood Books in 2008. Page 20. Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest moment in history that two global superpowers unleashed nuclear hellfire upon each other and the world. President John F. Kennedy expertly diffused the situation, and an agreement was reached between the United States and the Soviet Union that didn't involve the end of the world. Let's hope that humanity learned from this event and a crisis like this never arises again. Thank you for your time.